day, ladies and gentlemen. Eric Coffin, January 2020. I'm here in Vancouver at the Metal Investors Forum. I'm here with Chris Taylor, who's the CEO of Great Bear Resources that probably won't need an introduction to a lot of you. It's been an extremely successful exploration story. You've really ramped things up, 2 or 3 times really in the last year. You're now up to being in the midst of a 20,000 meter program. Now, when you get up to that kind of meters, that number of drills, I know how much work you guys put into getting structural information. It's not just a matter of assays. I know it's the way that you guys log core is incredibly intensive.
Yeah.
How do you not sort of get in your own way when you're trying to pull that much information out of so much core? Because I've noted several times before you have really good drillers. I mean, they produce a lot of core every day.
Yeah. 5 rigs will produce hundreds and hundreds of meters. It depends on the day, but several hundred meters of core is expected daily out of that drilling. So we've been successful by not cutting corners up to this point. That's really why Great Bear has done so well. But in some of the drilling that's coming up, not the regional exploration, but the focused exploration that's around the LP fault zone, there might be an opportunity to say not do oriented core on some of it, because we have thousands and thousands of structural data points. That would accelerate the process a little bit. Certainly we have more staff in place now, but there's more drill rigs to be able to handle. And there's 3 core shacks now as well, Eric. So It keeps expanding as a footprint, as a project as well.
Now, is most of the focus going forward on, there's a series of discoveries that you made in the last year in about a 4-kilometer section. Is that where most of the work's going to go on, or you're going to have some other stuff spread out as well?
Well, see, we wrestle with this as well. And one of the things that we had recently was I think we set a record for a board meeting length. So we had a 6-hour board meeting on Friday last week. And part of that is just discussing strategy. So the question is, how much gold is enough gold? Right. For any project in the world. And, when we do estimation, anybody with the calculator can look at the data that we've presented, and they could probably give you a guesstimate off of what we might be dealing with. And when we do that, it's pretty obvious that 4 or 5 kilometers along the LP fault that we've been drilling on is probably more than enough. Right. So we have right now, there'll be a drill rig that's doing regional exploration the entire time, testing new targets across the project. There's a lot of targets that we still have to test. About 80% of the project still needs to be drilled. But out of the 5 rigs on site, 4 of them will be dedicated to going along the LP fault in that sort of central area, and sometimes going over to the hinge and limb as well. Okay,
and one thing I've pointed out 2 or 3 times to subscribers in the last 2 or 3 months is, when you shift to a program this big, 200,000 meters, Chris is not going to be putting out 2 or 3 drill holes at a time.
No.
With this many rigs going, you're probably going to be putting out, 12, 15, 20 holes in a shot. Mm-hmm. And I know one thing that you talked about, because you sort of got I know you get some pushback from some of the analysts and stuff last year, where you're going to be trying to present basically sections when you put out new results now.
Yeah. That's exactly right, because there's so much attention on Great Bear at the moment that when we put out drill holes, say I have 10 drill sections and I have 1 drill hole from each section, it's not really definitive, right? So, and you generally see a widening of the zone as we go to depth, for instance, but in order to find the zone, you're going to hit it at a different level depending on the section. So what you need to do is a fence of holes on each section, and that's what we'll be doing, is presenting material results section by section as we go along this big target. And I think that'll give the analysts and other sort of market players the ability to say, well, it isn't just a hit here and a hit there. They'll see that consistency that we're seeing in the data, and in the rocks, they'll see it in the data. And that'll be really important for having an orderly growth on Great Bear this year.
And I think the new rigs, I think you mentioned the new rigs you added, I think they're slightly larger drill rigs than newer ones, so you can actually go deeper if you want.
Yeah, or you can drill shallow holes faster. Okay. Both of those. So these ones will let us go down to about up to 2,000 meters if we so desire. And I think, while you don't want to drill off 5 kilometers at 2 kilometers depth, you do want to hit the zone deeper in places, because it'll show people that, eventually when everybody's getting their head around how many ounces there could be, you can multiply that by, say, a factor of X, right? 2 or 3 or whatever, depending on how deep that it's gone. So it gives you a lot of extra benefit by doing some of that drilling too.
Okay, and then one other thing I want to touch on, because it's another sort of spin you put on the story, literally and figuratively. You added a 2% NSR to the Dixie project, and with the kind of ounces it looks like Dixie's going to have, that's a pretty valuable asset. You guys are going to be essentially distributing that to Great Bear shareholders. You got a sense of the timelines on that now? I mean, is it kind of nailed down, or?
Yeah, there'll be news on that during January of this year. So I'd expect some of that to go forward. There's a lot of paperwork involved in this. So, generally it's a feeding day for legal when you're going through a process like that. So there'll be news out, and that'll discuss all the timelines and the ratios and everything else, voting times. Obviously shareholders have to approve this sort of thing. So all that information will be provided in the near term.
Okay, but essentially what you're thinking is that people that are Great Bear shareholders on day X, on the record date, whenever that is in the future, it's going to be a separate entity, but it's going to be kind of a passive thing where just you'll get an interest in relation to whatever you own in terms of shares, but it's just going to kind of be there for now.
Yeah, that's right.
You got enough on your plate. I mean,
it's the kind of thing that could have a huge value in the future, but doesn't have a lot of current value, right? And the royalty on a non-producing asset, they're typically valued in a few $1 million, that kind of range. Yeah. Whereas on a major producing asset, it could be hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's a good time to do it now before you're basically distributing something that would have big tax implications for us as shareholders, right? So this is a good time to do it, and it'll make sure that in whatever future discussions Great Bear has, this is already baked into the equation.
Yeah, there'll be no arguing about it. It'll be a done deal.
Exactly. So, and by spinning it out and having it, say, as a publicly distributed but private entity initially, you don't have to deal with the extra costs you get by having a listed issuer. So it keeps it cheap. We don't want to spend money when it's effectively just sitting there protecting the future value of the asset.
Okay. No, it sounds like a great idea. You are, of course, fully funded for this 200,000 meter drill program.
Yes.
Still has a very tight share structure. I mean, it's an amazing story. I mean, you sort of made the quip at the start of your presentation earlier today about, what would happen if you laid all this stuff out and everything went right. That's kind of what's happened with Great Bear. I mean, kind of everything that could go right has gone right, and I suspect we're not done seeing things go right. I think there's a few more go rights in our future. So. GBR, Vancouver, great story, great management team, great project, lots of money. You got to be paying attention to this one.